Hi guys, welcome to this tutorial where I'm going to take you through the process of capturing your budget in Quantrix. Remember, for you to be able to capture your budget in Quantrix, you must have done two things. First of all, you must make sure that the activity is listed on the Maintain Program Activities matrix. In our case, we're going to work with an activity called Gender Responsive Economic Policy Management. So here, as we can see, the activity is right there on this matrix. The next thing you need to ensure is to ensure that your activity planning has the activity there listed. So in this case, our activity is the very last activity on the matrix. And if we check in the expenditure status column, you can see that the status of that activity is still gray, which means the activity has not yet been budgeted for. Once you are done with that, the next thing you need to do is to go ahead with your activity budget. So let's navigate to the activity budgeting folder. And to do that, we go to the activity budgeting folder and we go to the prepare activity budgets subfolder. In there, you'll find a folder called program costs budgeting. And the matrix that we're interested in is the very first one, activity cost planning. Right, so let's talk about this matrix for a bit before we start the process of budgeting on this matrix. All right, so if you take a look at the extreme left-hand side of the matrix, you see your activity costs as listed by your finance department. And as we've been told in the previous tutorial, we are free to add activities here, only that we need to contact our finance department to add activities for us. The next section we're going to look at is the default assumptions section. And on this section, we're basically saying what is the default budgeting multiplier or cost of holding the activity in a specific region. For example, the default multiplier for accommodation participants is per person per day. The default accommodation cost of the particular activity in the MEFMI region is 93. 300 in the America and Far East region and Europe and other areas. So these are just your default assumptions that are entered by your finance department. The next section is the one we're interested in, where we're actually planning for the activity, both for MEFMI cash and in kind in the very last section there. So let's get budgeting. Our activity, remember, has been listed under a country called TBA, which means we were not quite certain of the country in which the activity was going to take place at the point of budgeting. So under our country TBA, we look for our activity, which is right there, Gender Responsive Economic Policy. So we select our activity right there. So we select our activity on the filter on top there. The next thing that you need to do is to activate certain activity cost lines that you're interested to budget for that particular activity. For example, in this case, I'm going to assume that we're interested in budgeting for staff, accommodation for staff. So we come to this column that says select yes to budget for this line, and we click on yes. Notice that the moment you select yes, the line is activated for you to budget. Right, I'm going to select another line under accommodation, which is resource persons regional. So I'll come again and select yes in the column there. So notice in this section that follows, it talks about the budget, the unit cost, the budget multiplier, and the funding source. And remember, I talked about the defaults in the first section there. In case you want to change the default budgeting multiplier of accommodation staff, simply come to this column and select the multiplier that you're interested in. For example, I'm going to change it to per day. Notice that the moment I change it to per day, it highlights only the section for entering the number of nights. So in this case, I'm going to assume that the accommodation cost is going to be 300, which is the default, for 10 nights. The moment I do that, the system will multiply 10 by 93, which is the default accommodation cost per night, to give us a budgeted amount of $930. For the next line, which is resource persons regional accommodation, I'm going to leave the default budgeting multiplier as is, and I'll capture the same number of nights, which is 10 nights. For maybe let's just assume that there were 2 regional resource persons. And notice that it automatically uses the default amount of 93. But let's say you want to change that amount to $100. You simply come to the section for capturing your unit of full cost and capture your $100. And the budgeted amount becomes $100 times 10 nights times 2 people, which gives you 2,000. So that's it. That's how you capture the accommodation costs. The process of capturing the rest of the costs, per diems, travel, professional fees, and facilities and material is the same. So I'm going to capture a line under each of those sections so that we complete our budget. So per diem stuff is going to be 10 nights for let's say, for example, the same number of nights, the same number of people, which is 2 people, to give us that. I'm also going to select travel costs for staff. I'm going to assume that we are going to have maybe 5 members of staff at a cost of $950 to give us a budgeted amount of $4,750. So the next thing I want to show you is capturing the in-kind section. So let's take this particular line as an example. So to move this 4,750 to the in-kind section, you need to have captured it on the MEFMI cash section. And to move it, I simply type the 5 in there and the default cost of 950 to give us a budgeted amount of 4,750 all in kind. If part of it was in kind, I would have simply captured, for example, 3 people on the in kind section, and notice how it splits your budgeted amount on the MEFMI cash and in kind respectively. So as I mentioned, the process of capturing is the same, so I'm going to submit this budget as is. And to submit your budget, you click on the Submit Prog Activities Budget. So we'll just wait for our budget to submit. Right. So the moment your screen clears, you know that your budget is submitted. All right, there are a couple of other things I want to show you on capturing your budget that are available on the screen. So there is the clear screen button there that helps you to clear the screen. Maybe, for example, you're capturing and you want to restart the capturing process. You simply use the clear screen button there and it clears everything that you'd have captured. There's also functionality to copy from specific activity, and let's make use of it. So I'm going to budget for the same activity, but when it comes to the cost of that activity, I'm going to copy from a specific activity. And if I click on the filter there, I'll see the list of activities that I can copy from. I'm just going to copy from any activity for illustration purposes and click on the Copy from Specific Activity button. Notice that the moment I do that, the system will give me the exact same budget as the activity I've captured from. So you're free to edit it to come up with your budget for the particular activity you're working on. So I'm going to clear the screen and show you the next functionality, which is copy from old activity. So the difference between copy from specific activity and copy from old activity is that the copy from specific activity copies from an activity in the same budgeting year. The functionality I'm going to show you now copies the costs from an activity in any prior year that you have used in the system. So in this case, if I go down the drop down, I'll see that the activities from 2017 and 2018. Let's assume I want to copy from an activity that was done in 2017. So I'll select the activity and click on Copy from Old Activity. So if the activity has costs, you should see the cost populated right there. And if the budget is exactly the same as the old activity, you simply click on Submit Prog Activities. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is how you budget for your activity in Quantrix. Thank you for listening to this tutorial. Stay tuned for the next tutorial.